Hello, today we're going to talk about St Edmund and St Mary's Church in Ingatestone in Essex, and I'm going to do something slightly different. I'm actually starting at the wonderful Buttsbury Church, not too far away, and I'm going to walk across to the old hall at Ingatestone. So this is a highly recommended walk. Just like to start to say that they are trying to stop this pylon scheme going on. So basically what they want to do is put pylons across the landscape here. So there's a petition out on that. Right, so Ingatestone is a village in Essex. It's surrounded by rolling Essex countryside, which you can see right now. It's 5 miles from Billericay and it's 6 miles from Chelmsford. The elevation of Ingatestone is 71 metres and the population is 5,580. Now, when I write these articles, I'm sometimes stuck with what to write on the ancient history, but not so with Ingatestone. So just before 450,000 years ago, yeah, I said that right, the Anglian ice sheet formed here. The River Thames actually ran past Colchester, and then the ice formed, and it was 3,000 feet thick, or 1,000 metres in new money. Its mighty face, the wall, ran directly through Ingatestone, and it would stay this way until 11,700 years ago, when the Great Melt dropped huge boulders of pudding stone and sarsen stones. Now, the beautiful landscape which we can see now was carved out by the meltwater, and like I said, I'd highly recommend this walk. Now, these wonderful sarsen stones, which we will see a bit later, were left by the Ice Age, and there was 3 in total in Ingatestone. 2 of these flank Freening Lane, which heads to the most elegant of villages, and the 3rd stone was buried under the north wall and was found in the previous century by workmen who wanted to build extended church for the organ. They've now put it on the south wall, so we'll have a look. It's possible that the 3 stones are from one giant sarsen stone. Now, the Druids of old, the Celtic priests of the day, would worship such stones, and across Wales and Ireland and England. Now, sarsen stones were believed to speak and foretell the future. The Celts believed that these stones were in fact their ancestors. We will never know. We do have one very interesting witness, Emperor Julius Caesar himself. For when he invaded England in 54 BC, he wrote, "The Druids are in charge of all religious matters, superintending public and private sacrifices and explaining superstitions." Now, just to point out where we're walking now, I met some metal detectorists, and they told me that from the X-ray systems they use, or the maps, the LiDAR I think they're called, around this area there would have been a settlement that would have followed this low land here. They also told me that they found Roman coins just up there. Now, talking about the Romans, they conquered England in AD 43 under Emperor Claudius, and he made his way from Tilbury to Brentwood, through Ingatestone and off to Chelmsford and Colchester. Now the original marching route still follows the A12 road. It's basically through the high street as it is today. The Romans also left mileposts set in stone from Londinium to Colchester. It is believed one such stone was marked with the Saxon word ing, meaning meadow, hence the origin of Ingatestone, meaning meadow at the stone. Now from 950 AD, Barking Abbey owned much land here, in fact what we're walking on right now, including the lands of today's Ingatestone Hall. The land would go much further than Freening and Stock. Now Barking Abbey goes back to St Augustine of 596. Now by the time of 950, England had become a patchwork of Saxon and Danish Viking strongholds and kingdoms. At that time York was ruled by Eric the Blood Axe, the Viking, and down here in Essex King Edgar the Peaceful ruled. Edgar was the son of King Edmund I, so you can see the connection to the parish church. Now if we go back to 870, Barking lay deserted. It had been sacked by the Danes, and it wouldn't be until King Edgar rebuilt Barking with royal funding and backing. And so in 950 the Benedictine nuns would come to Ingatestone, or most possibly, and they would have been led by Abbess Wulfhilda. Now there's not 100% proof that they set up a small nunnery here, but it's most likely because if we look at Buttsbury Church, St Mary's, they had some nuns over from Stratford-le-Bow, and the same happened with Great Bursted, so it's most probable. But if we look at what the life of a nun was like, so this would be under Wulfhilda. So at midnight a service and then sleep, and at 3 AM the morning service until dawn. Then they would sleep for 2 hours. Then they would attend judicial business, work and spiritual reading until 9 AM. There'd be a high mass at midday at a meal, and there would be communal recreation followed by farming and housekeeping until twilight. Then it would be back to evening prayers at 6 PM, then a night of prayer until 9 PM and then bed. And so the monastery here, if we say there was one, was actually called Jingi Abbess, but like I said, very little is known of it. Hello. Now we're going to cross over the River Wid, and this river is very important for the whole of this area. Now in 1351 there was a water mill here, and it was connected to Bacon's farm, which is just to the left of Ingatestone Hall. Now during the Saxon period, Barking Abbey was lord of the manor here. And from 1086, under Norman rule, unusually it stayed as it was. Under Barking's ownership. Now we know that only 11 households were here, along with one freeman and one slave, and it would have been over 500 pigs, some cattle and sheep. Now when William the Conqueror lived in London, he chose Barking Abbey to stay at whilst his new stronghold, the Tower of London, was being built. So we also know that in 1066 the abbess was Efgiva. Now during this time it was often required for the abbess to collect revenues from the surrounding villages, exactly like Ingatestone. Now by her side the abbess would have a sergeantry escort for protection, and at other times, if she couldn't come in person, she would have a bailiff on her behalf. And you can see where we've just walked from. Now the list of abbesses that I researched most fascinated, and they would have all been here to collect revenues, to possibly stay here, etc. So we have Queen Matilda of Scotland. She was the wife of King Henry I in 1104. We have Queen Matilda, wife of Stephen, or King Stephen, 1136, and he's one of the most famous kings of the Norman period. We have Duchess Matilda, who was the daughter of King Henry II, 1175, and I think she was the granddaughter of Empress Matilda, so you can see why they kept the name. We have Mary, sister of St Thomas Becket, the famous archbishop who was executed by Henry's knights in 1173. We also have Maud, the illegitimate daughter of King John, 1247. King John is famous for the Magna Carta. We also have Catherine of Sutton, 1358. Now Catherine was England's first female playwright. Okay, I'm just leaving the path now to show you what happens if you do stand under an oak tree, or any tree, but especially oaks, in a thunderstorm. But amazingly the old oak will live on. It's quite resilient. We should rejoin the path to Ingatestone, and from here you can just see Ingatestone up there. Okay, now we're at the top, or more or less at the top of the hill, and in the distance, where is it? I can't see, somewhere down there, is Buttsbury Church. So in front of us, behind that tree line, is actually Ingatestone Hall. Now, in 1535, Henry VIII ordered his chief secretary, Thomas Cromwell, to shut down the monasteries, confiscating all the monies and possessions to the crown. Now, Sir William Peter was the commissioner who received Barking Abbey from its last ever abbess, 49-year-old Dorothy Barley, and she would have had 30 nuns under her. Now, Sir William was in fact married to Gertrude Tyrrell, and we shall see her funeral slab in the church later. Now, Gertrude Tyrrell, whose sister Mary Tyrrell, was one of the last nuns from Barking Abbey, and the Tyrrell family are one of the ancient families that came over with the Normans. Now, the abbess was also a close friend of the Peters family and godmother to Sir William's second child. Now, when the monasteries were broke up, Sir William in fact gave generously to the nuns, issuing a pension which ran into the reign of Mary I. The old abbess retired in the village of Weald, it's not too far from here, and across the country nuns and monks resorted to poverty and begging. Now, a small entry that actually is in Henry VIII's papers, ending 800 years of Barking Abbey's existence. It reads, "Surrender by Dorothy Barley, abbess and convent of the monastery, and all its possessions in Essex, 14th November 1539. Now, Sir William Peter ended up purchasing Ingatestone Manor for its full asking price of £849 and all the monastic lands connected. Now, Sir William was a devout Catholic and was absolved of any involvement in the monastery breakups by Pope Paul IV, as long as he built the almshouses, which he did, and he built several in Ingatestone. The ones that are there today are a newer version. These would have been for the poor. Now, as you can see, the house and grounds are closed. But I highly recommend you visit this old hall. And in the distance we can see the gatehouse, I guess it is. So Sir William Peter became Secretary of State for 3 monarchs. So it'd be King Henry VIII, Edward VI and Queen Mary, and he was deputised under Elizabeth I. He was originally a lawyer, and he built Ingatestone Hall in 1539. Now, in 1561, Queen Elizabeth herself spent time at this old hall, so she would have basically gone through the very same gates, or possibly the same gates, but definitely the same entrance, and straight through that most old gatehouse. Like I said, the hall is open, and you have to check times that it will be open for. But the Peter family to this day are loyal to the Catholic faith, and in the past sheltered a number of Catholic priests during the 16th century and around that period. And that would have been most dangerous for them. It could have resulted in execution or lands being confiscated. Now the main hall, when you go in there, still contains the original priest holes. There are two. And a priest would have been hidden there during a search. Now one priest, John Payne, was arrested on this estate and imprisoned. He was working here in disguise and somebody gave him away. He was sent off to the Tower of London, but Payne was released and then rearrested and charged with treason in Chelmsford and executed. Now I'm leaving Ingatestone Hall and I'm walking towards Ingatestone village itself. I timed it, it's 12 minutes, well that's at least for me, and from here to Buttsbury it's about 15. So I'll see you when we get through to Ingatestone village. Now we're walking over the old railway lines that were built in 1844, and these would have been used for the Peter family to get into Ingatestone, this bridge. And if we look here, we can see where the church is. So now we're at Ingatestone's cricket pitch. Which is literally opposite St Edmund's, St Mary's. So now we're approaching the old church. Get through this bent and twisted old gate. So in 1628 a petition was launched, even signed by the rector of St Edmund's Church. They wanted the closure of 5 or more pubs throughout Ingatestone. They were prepared to tolerate 2 pubs, the Cock and the Swan. Now today, the Start pub, which we see before us, dates from an incredibly old age of 1480. Officially it was first registered in 1631 and it was then called the White Horse. Now over the following centuries it would become a butcher's and a bakery. It was actually known as the Hole in the Wall, and I'm going to show you that now. So now we're across the road, and what I said was the Hole in the Wall, the lane which runs besides, you can still see it, led to a horse fair. Dealers arrived from all over England and Wales, and all sorts of fights would break out and things would go missing. And the solution, the landlord served ale through a small window, and it's still here today. It's a really interesting mural in the centre of Ingatestone there. Relates to the past. Now straight in front of us we have the Bell Inn, which is another ancient pub. It was built in the 16th century. Originally it was a coaching inn for the London to Colchester stagecoach, or coaches. Now by the reign of Queen Victoria in 1837, Ingatestone had over 50 stagecoaches per day. It was a massive business, and this small village actually had 20 inns. Yep, you heard me correct, 20. They would have been lined up on this high street. but that was all about to change with the railways. Ingatestone's very own fire station. Now if you look straight ahead, this is the original Roman road which Emperor Claudius would have marched his 20,000 legionnaires and war elephants. And if we go straight ahead in this direction, it will be Ingatestone and then Chelmsford. So by 1844 this railway line had been built through Lord William Peters' estate and he was not happy about it, and I can fully understand why. He received quite a fair bit of compensation and insisted that the station would be built in Tudor style. So we'll have a look at it. So I'm now standing at the station of Ingatestone, and it's a Grade 2 listed structure built in the Victorian period. And you can see that it's copied the style of the period with the crosses on the wall in brick, black brick. Now an unusual event happened in 1884. The Great English Earthquake struck, causing damage here. And 3 years later a freak hailstorm struck. They actually had golf ball sized hailstones which did a lot of damage to buildings and even killed livestock. Now in 1899 Ingatestone and Freening amalgamated. Now, during World War I, Zeppelins would pass over the high street we walked through earlier, and in 1916 a Super Zeppelin L-32 was shot down over Billericay and crashed in Great Bursted, so it would have definitely been seen from this town or village. Now the men from here joined in both wars, and 78 were recorded as not returning. Troops were often billeted in the town. Now I've done a complete circuit. I'm back at the church, and this is the Sarsen stone that was found under the north wall that was moved here by workmen. We'll come back to the church in a minute, which is it. It is open. You can see where it lays on the high street. So today Ingatestone is a very attractive village, as you can see. Many folk here will commute to London via the train. The village has 2 supermarkets. It's got a butcher's, a baker's, a chemist, a library and so much more. It's even got an Anglo-European school specialising in language study. I also found that it's got 2 football teams and the cricket club where we just have been. So we shall have a look at the 2 Sarsen stones which flank Freening Lane. So this is a very busy little junction indeed. Now if you look over there, actually we'll go over here. And we'll have a look. So I've placed these old bells to protect the walls of the buildings, but you can see here this is Freening Lane. So we're actually at St Edmund's and St Mary's Church. The walls are of pudding stone and flint and pebble rubble, and all this would have come from the ancient glacier that would have ended right here. There's a fair amount of Roman brick, which we'll have a look at later, and we've got bricks ranging from the 15th to the 17th century. Now we're standing at the West Tower. Now, a local gentleman told me that this tower has got 500,000 bricks in it. Now this tower was built in the 15th century. It's quite remarkable. It's actually built around 1470, and it's red brick with diaper patterns. So if you look up, you can just about make out the crosses. I'm not sure if they're connected to St Andrew. It's built in 4 stages, and when they had the great earthquake, or the English earthquake of 1884, the epicentre was in Colchester, but the shock waves came right down as far as actually Ireland and affected the tower here, and it says that it was significant damage to the West Tower. Okay, so we're going to go into the church itself. And if you look above, this is where it would house the 5 bells, I believe it's got. Now, there is a petition or some information on the power lines that I've proposed to go across the very field that we walked across towards Ingatestone Hall, so it's worth looking at. As you come in, you're faced with this plan which details not only the dates of the structure, but also goes into great detail of the memorials which are built into the walls or touch the walls. So what we're starting with here is the nave, 42 feet by 16 feet. It's the oldest part of the building. Now this wall on the north wall is actually 11th century, possibly from around 1080, which is not far after William the Conqueror. Now what we have here is a very large north doorway. This could well have been used for the gentry to enter the building. And I did see quite an unusual aperture that goes all the way through. I'm not sure the reason of that. We've got a Victorian period font, and it looks 16th or 15th century, but it's paperwork assures me that it's reproduction. Now, we have 3 bays and 3 columns or piers, and these also date from about 14th century, and you can see the original base there. If you look above, we have the original 3 tie beams carrying octagonal king posts resting on moulded wall plates. They're all original from the Tudor period. We've got a memorial window from 1872. Incredibly vibrant colours. And we have a very interesting memorial here. This is to Algernon George Newcombe Wood. He's got a DSO, who's a major and adjutant in the Essex Regiment. and he served with the regiment through South Africa War, and he was wounded and he died in Gallipoli, the first in 1915. Now we have the pulpit, which is constructed the same period as the font. And then behind that we have a really nice window. Now, behind on the wall here, it's been covered over. There was a medieval wall painting. This is a copy of it, and it was painted over because it was too offensive, so I understand. We're in the south aisle now. We've got a window here from 1891. Now if we pan down to the south aisle itself, it was added in the 15th century. It's 14 feet wide, and it's got a Victorian period roof. Now, if you look down here, you've got some very old tiles merged in with new ones. You can't really see it, but the wall is so crooked. If I was to sort of make that level, it'd be, I'm guessing, about half a foot out of the top. And if you go outside, there's some really big buttresses. Now, on the south wall of the south aisle, we've got a really nice window, going with great colours, Victorian period. This is 1876. Now, if you look here, you've got a very small doorway, and this would have been the original rood stair access. It measures about 4 feet, I guess, by about 16 inches. So very narrow. And if you look, you can actually see where the workmen have hewn it out with the tools. Now we're facing the chancel, which is 36 feet by 17 feet. It was built originally in the 11th century, but it was later enlarged in the 16th century, so you can see from the brick outside. We've got a really tight fit-in organ, and you can see just how tight that squeezes into the recess. Now underneath this is where the sarsen stone was discovered by workmen. And again, look at that. I suspect it's come from a previous church. We have a memorial here to Edgar Disney. I believe he's not related to the famous Disney family in America. He's got a most interesting family crest. And there's various memorials on the floor. Extremely old floor slab there. Now above that we've got a really old font, and this was discovered in the Victorian period in the cemetery. So it could be the oldest part of the church. Now we have the high altar area, and above that we've got a, looks like a marble reredos, and the most beautiful window. Separating the structure is these brick base columns, and then you see this amazing tomb, tabletop tomb and effigy on the south side. Now this is to Sir William Peter, who's Secretary of State to King Henry VIII. He was counsellor to Edward VI and Queen Mary, and also Elizabeth I. He was also Chancellor of the Order of the Garter, 1571, and next to him lies his wife Anne Brown, or Lady Anne Brown. It was his second wife. Sir William was the first Peter of Ingatestone Hall. Now, so it's actually made of alabaster stone and marble, and Sir William Peter rests against his actual helmet there. It's incredible detail. And if you look at the plate armour he's wearing, you can catch some of the detail here, where it's the clasp that closes it, where the elbow bends. There's another detail there. Even down to the belt. And there's another further one to the rear is fire, and then you've got the knee attachment. No cheating has happened here. This is great craftsmanship. And then his feet rest. I guess something to do with the family. Arms. Now we move to the other side. This is Lady Anne Brown, and she's got closed hands, and her headdress is actually called a closed headdress. She's got brocaded skirt cloak. I did notice there's a gap there, so there might have been some coming out of there originally. If you follow it across, stonemason has pleated the cloak, and then at the base she has feet on a lozenge of arms. And they both rest on a rush mattress. You can see the great detail there. If you follow it, you can follow the folds. Now, underneath the effigy, we've got a really ancient floor slab here, and this is actually for Gertrude Tyrrell, who was the first wife of Sir William Peter, and his wish when he died, well, before he died, was that he'd be buried with both his wives, but for some reason she's buried separately. Now the Tyrrells, they also came over with William the Conqueror, so they're an ancient Norman family. So now we're going to enter the North Chapel, which measures 19 feet by 16. It's built in the 17th century from brick, and this would have been the private chapel to the Peter family. I guess it still is. And what you're met with, I come right back. This is magnificent memorial to 3 generations of the Peter family. Now what we have here is, let me get this right, we have John, the first Lord Peter of Writtle, 1613, and if you have a look, you can see him wearing his ruffs. I'll try and go up as high as I can. And he's got a cloak and full armour. He's kneeling on a cushion. This is his wife. This would be Lady Waldegrave. And you can see beautiful costume that they're wearing. And they're both kneeling at a prayer desk, as you can see there, both with fur-lined cloaks, and you can see the amazing ruff that she's wearing. We move on to this side. This is Catherine. She's daughter of Earl of Worcester and the wife of 2nd Lord Peter William. Now if we go over, we can actually see Sir William himself. So Sir William, he actually commissioned this very memorial to his father, Sir John. Again, it's got amazing ruff, fur-lined collars and armour. Now if you look underneath, you've got their children. So these will be the grandchildren of Sir John and Mary. Now when you first look at it, it looks like there's, say, 6 or 5, but actually the stonemason has cleverly duplicated. So he's carved each child. And you can see as they're getting older. It seems as from what I've noticed, as they're getting older, the ruffs seem to be getting bigger. So there's 8 boys in total. And if we go on to the right side, we've got the girls. Again, some sort of system with the ruffs. You see the first daughter's got the ruff and the others haven't got them. You can see the hair styles of the day. Quite incredible. Now above the vestry door, we've got a royal coat of arms. This is from 1673. And this is from Charles II, eldest surviving son of Charles I, who was executed by Oliver Cromwell. Now Charles II was 8 years old when the Civil War broke out. It's a very unusual style of painting, and you can actually see the original number coming off there. Now we're at the South Chapel, which is 32 feet by 16 feet, and it's built from brick, and it's 16th century. Now if we look against the east wall, we can see a memorial, also another Peter in period armour. So this is to Robert Peter of 1593. He was an officer of Queen Elizabeth I. Now if we look at the window in the rear, on the east window, I should go around actually. Now this window, this shows St Edmund. Legend says that he was captured by the great heathen army of the Danish Vikings, and he refused to renounce Christ. The Danes tested his faith by firing arrows at him, and the Vikings present said to have converted to Christianity, so impressed with St Edmund's faith. Now King Canute of 1016, the greatest of all the Vikings, he built St Edmund's Abbey, and he had St Edmund interned there. But the reality is we don't know much about St Edmund. Right, this is Captain John Trolfan of 1621. This is a memorial in alabaster stone. And John was born in 1555, most likely in Devon. And when he was young, he worked at Ingatestone Hall. He became a sea captain of HMS Bonaventure. He served under Sir Francis Drake in the Elizabethan period. Captain Trolfan was a privateer attacking Spanish and Portuguese ships, he would confiscate gold, silver and goods, and he would sell them to the crown for a profit. He saw action against the Spanish at Cadiz, taking the Spanish Vice Admiral's ship, and he wrote the journal, The Last Voyage of Drake and Hawkins. Now, when Sir Francis Drake died of dysentery, he was buried at sea in a lead coffin off the coast of Panama. The shipwreck hunters today still search for this. Now, Tralfamadore and Drake made England incredibly wealthy in the 16th century. What's interesting is above his head, on the other side, so that'll be outside on the east wall, when the sun rises, there's a vent of some sort, and it's said that he's got like a halo above his head. So quite a character. Okay, so now we're going to leave this old church. I just wanted to show you just one other memorial, which I found quite interesting. Cecil Harvey Crowe was killed in action in Egypt with the mounted rifles. And another young fellow who's died in World War I in France. So let's have a look outside. Now, it's a glorious day today. It's literally 28. We're going to walk around and have a look. Now the sun's catching it really nice. You can see the detail. So this is where the Victorians have renovated the south aisle. And you can see it looks like this side of the wall is actually straight. So I've got a feeling they've completely rebuilt this and put these buttresses in. These huge buttresses. I forgot to tell you that that window in there, that was donated in 2000 by the Flower Arranging Society or Group. So you can see how they've incorporated some ancient stones. It's one of the old family tombs there, seen better days. Now if you look up there, you can see Captain John Tralfamador's. Well, to the rear of it, you can see where the light comes through that vent. I've been told it's quite strange if you're in the church when the sun rises. And here we can see the extension to the chancel. And this is Peter Private Chapel. Now I'll notice this window frame, these jambs, is all made in oak, and this is most unusual. Now I'm just thinking the reason they've done this is because it looks like there's hinges there, and I would imagine that it would give some ventilation when the family were visiting. I've never seen a wooden window frame. It's normally stone. We should go through. And there's a vestry with a tower just peeping above the top. Now you see yew trees. These are common yews, English yews. This one looks really old, but actually it's no more than 200-300 years old. but it can go on to become 1,000 years old without any problems. Now we're going to go round to the oldest part of the church, and you can straight away see just how old this is. You look up there, you've got all kinds of brickwork merging in, and you can see they've literally buttered it up. But this is what's interesting for me, is the masonry from the past. That could be something of a drain. Remember, this is around 1080, so they've used whatever they can get. You've got a huge amount of pudding stone. So remember, this is from the glacier. You can see where the pebbles have fused with the sand. The whole wall is basically built from this type of rock. So it's literally been hacked into pieces, so it would have been readily available. And then we start seeing Roman tile, from most likely from a villa. Just think about that. We've got Roman brick, so it's easy, about 1.5 inches to 2 inches. Roman tiles. Sometimes if you look at these, you can see fingerprints in them. So there would have been a villa here. There's another type of Roman stone. We've got an ancient north doorway. Now this doorway is likely to have been the access for the lords of the manor. And if you look, the headstops are completely worn. This is most likely to be the Norman King Stephen, and this will be Empress Matilda. And they were basically at war with each other in a civil war across the country for decades. But eventually Matilda's son became, I believe, King John II, if I'm not mistaken. So you can see completely put in stone. But then if you look at the edge, this is a coin, which is the wall of the original nave before the tower was built. And again, you can see they've literally the Normans have knocked down the villa and reutilised everything. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed that. I'd just like to say that St Edmund St Mary Church carries out baptisms, weddings and funerals, and is active in the community. Thank you very much.